But yeah, the most surprising thing probably shouldn't have been that surprising, but it was for me a little bit, was that we sell a lot of Magic, which was never really my core intent to be a card shop, but now we kind of are.
How did you get into gaming? Like, what was your catalyst that drew you to gaming as a whole? Did it start off young, or did it come later in life?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, gaming in general is a pretty broad category, right? So I've always been interested in, obviously, video games since very young. That was my first real introduction when we say games in general. In terms of like more tabletop games in the board game in the store and things like that, video games since very early. That was kind of my real introduction, was Super Nintendo. But in terms of kind of tabletop games and the game store stuff, that didn't really come until later in life, where I'd always kind of had a cursory knowledge of a lot of games like Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. Just never really had an opportunity to actually get into them until much later in life, where even after I graduated college, I had a friend, a coworker, who introduced me to both Magic and Dungeons and Dragons. That was when I really got into more of the tabletop side of things. So he just invited me to play Dungeons and Dragons one day, and I was like, whoa, this is awesome. Again, I had always been really nerdy. I just never had the opportunity to go fully deep into it until I had this invite from a friend, again, way later in life than probably a lot of people would get introduced to some of these things. It was that same friend, that same coworker, who also introduced me to Magic. And then pretty soon after that, Magic Arena came out, the computer client for Magic the Gathering. And I got pretty into that for a while. And yeah, again, to answer your question, like games, I've always been interested in games. I've always been really nerdy, but like actual tabletop games, I didn't really get fully into until much later into life for me.
And did you grow up where the store is currently located? Are you from the same town, or did you grow up in a different state, or because you're located in Utah?
Yeah, no, I actually grew up in Oregon. I came to Utah for school and just stuck around because I ended up working in technology, software technology. And Utah, surprisingly, has a pretty good tech scene. So we have a number of technology companies. So it was really easy after graduating to find a job. I do product management alongside the game store. I also work, again, in software development as a product manager. And so when I graduated school, again, I came to Utah for school. I graduated school. That was how I got to Utah, and then I just stuck around because the job market here was really good. And I put down some roots. I'm now married, have kids, in a house here in Utah, so like I was pretty established by the time I opened the store. So it just kind of made sense to continue to operate here.
When you decided to go to school in Utah, did you know that's where you wanted to go back from when you were in high school, still living in Oregon, or was Utah one of the, say, many number of places you were thinking of going to, or did you have your sights set on Utah?
No, I mean, not necessarily. Utah was kind of just one of the options that seemed like it had a really good potential for me. Obviously, growing up in Oregon, there's a lot of universities in Oregon as well, but I just ended up in Utah, and I'm really happy for that decision. And and here I am.
And where, Nathan, in your journey, from working in software, having gone to school for that, the game store came at some point, and I know with going to school for software, is that a field you worked in prior to eventually opening up the game store?
Yeah. So two parts to that question. I think the first part was, when did the game store come about? And the second part was software. How did that play into it, or when did I do that? I still do software. So I actually run the game store part-time. So the game store is called Riftgate Games. Our website is riftgate.com. I started that while I was several years actually into my software career as a product manager. I still do product management. So as I mentioned, I run the game store part-time. I still do full-time product management at a company called buffer.com. We make tools for social media scheduling. It's a very entrepreneurial friendly company. It's very supportive of people with their side businesses or startups and things like that. So it's been a really good opportunity to do both. Several years ago, though, I mentioned this friend before who helped me get into D&D. That was really the inception of the game store. So this friend who invited me to play D&D, I got into it. We played a campaign for several years. During the course of that campaign, I was just looking for something to keep me occupied. I had always been really entrepreneurial. I had several other businesses and small startups that I had tried, and to varying degrees of success. And while I was playing Dungeons and Dragons, I didn't have any of these other little side projects going on. And so I've always been pretty industrious. I mentioned I was pretty entrepreneurial. So while we were playing that game, I started making little handmade items for Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think I have any around here, but I started making little potion jars, like health potions for the game, that had little dice in them, and they're like really nice. They had like resin, like a nice little label, and I was pretty proud of them. And so I started selling them online. And through selling those handmade items online, I got more into kind of tangential game stuff. So I started selling more like dice for D&D, some of their gaming products online originally at Riftgate.com. And those props and handmade items and other items I had been sourcing and creating just kept selling. And so I kept investing more into it and selling more stuff. And pretty soon I had a pretty decent online store going. Just selling all these like various gaming supplies, a lot of dice. I think we just hit it at a time when D&D was really taking off. And for whatever reason, we were selling a lot of D&D dice online. And eventually got to the point where I had all this inventory. I was like filling my basement down here behind me. I had a small office here in Utah that I had hired an employee to start packing orders for selling dice online. But it just got to a point where we were out of room. So it was either I get a bigger warehouse, or I started thinking, I was like, I have all this stuff and there's other things I'd like to sell outside of just like RPG supplies. Maybe I should just open a storefront. And so that's what I did. It was a big risk, kind of a big gamble. It was something that's interesting to me. I loved small business. I loved the opportunity to try something new, with a brick and mortar store. Again, I had some experience in e-commerce for a while. So this was a whole new opportunity for us. But so rather than getting a warehouse for all this stuff I was selling, I just opened up a store. And I kind of used our online sales to fund and fuel the growth of the store a little bit. And we've grown a lot. Fortunately, we're in Utah where we have like a really, really nerdy population for some reason. We have a lot of game stores here, but there's a lot of demand for it as well. So it's a good place to start a game store. That's kind of the inception. Was just I was playing the game. I started making props for D&D. I liked them, so I started selling them, and other people liked them too. And then I started selling more stuff, and it just kept growing online. And eventually, it got to the point where I just was out of space and opened up a brick and mortar store. And since then, we've actually left that first store and gone to a bigger store now. We continue to sell a lot online, so things have been pretty good overall.
That's awesome. What was the most nerve-wracking feeling about taking that leap into starting up the store? Because I know you mentioned it was a little bit of a nervous feeling there.
Yeah, for sure. It was definitely signing the lease on commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is actually quite not beginner friendly. A lot of places want multi-year leases. They have quite a few stipulations about how you pay your rent. Some of them will want personal guarantees. And so there's just, in my mind, a lot of risk around like, okay, if the store doesn't work out, I'm going to end up paying out of pocket for a lot of like the lease expenses of, the space we were in. I was able to talk them down to just a 1-year initial lease, which was really good. So that, I was pretty confident we could make it through a year. And if we didn't, I knew like the maximum, penalty I would end up paying for this. So working with the leasing agent, I was able to get in a few stipulations that kind of lowered the risk for me personally. But still, you're signing, these leases are, a couple $1,000s a month. And with a personal guarantee on that lease, it's, I'm not wealthy by any means. It would have been quite painful if things didn't work out. So that was definitely the most nerve-wracking part and probably the biggest risk to moving forward. But it worked out. So
I'm glad to hear it worked out, and it's great that they were able to work with you on that 1-year lease initially. How has it been, because you mentioned you do this part-time, how is it doing this part-time? And then I'm guessing you have your project manager full-time job?
Yeah, it's a lot of work. It is actually quite a lot of work. I have my job, which I mentioned was very supportive and entrepreneurial friendly. It's a remote first job, so it affords me some extra time to kind of focus on the business in the evenings and on the weekends and things like that. But yeah, I do a full-time product management software job during the day, and in the evenings is when I'm working on the business. So one way I've just handled that is to make sure that, as soon as I'm able to kind of offload any particular task that I was doing a lot to someone I could hire, I just went for it. So what that has meant though, is that I really don't pay myself a lot out of the business, because anytime that I have excess funds or profits from the business, I try to hire somebody so I can just offload more of the work that I would be doing manually at the business to somebody else. So I'm really, really invested in just growing the business at a sustainable rate, to the detriment of paying myself. So I don't really take a lot of funds out of the business for myself right now. I try to invest it all back in the business. But the upside of that, again, has been that I've been able to hire people to kind of offload a lot of the work so that I can focus more on strategic things. And that being said, there's still a lot I do. I do most of the customer service. So every night I get on, I answer all the emails for customer service and things like that. I do all the inventory management and things like that. But overall, I have a great team that I've worked to hire, and that's been instrumental in my ability to kind of do both of these things right now.
I would imagine too, what alleviates the concern from your side too, in terms of, obviously you would love to be able to pay yourself, but I think it's very smart. You're thinking long-term, investing back into the business, whether it be hiring employees of that nature. I'm guessing having the full-time job eases that concern so that you can continue to reinvest back into it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's certainly more financial security in my full-time job than there is in the business right now. That being said, I think the ultimate goal is I'd love to be doing the business full-time. I don't know, it's just how things worked out. It made more sense for me to try to do these both, especially because I didn't want this to be a small store. Like I really wanted it to be like a big thing. Like I want to be a big name retailer for gaming supplies. I want to be a big store, and that's people know outside of Utah and things like that. So for me, it just makes a lot of sense to invest as much as I can in the business right now to get it to a point where it's really, really grown a lot, and then think more about how that might impact myself financially.
Do you foresee a point in time where you'll be able to transition into the business full time? Is there a goal there for you personally for that, or do you like the operation that you currently have right now?
I would certainly love to have more time back in my life, instead of trying to run two of these jobs at the same time. I don't necessarily have a plan or a target in mind of when I would consider transitioning out of that. I really enjoy the job I do in software development. The company I work for is great. It's been really just a great opportunity for me all around. So I'm not anxious to kind of split that or split from that. But I do really enjoy working in the store as well. So I don't know. It's just there's a lot of unknowns. This whole thing has kind of grown really organically and without much of a long-term plan. So I hopefully becomes more clear about which direction it's taking. But I'm not super anxious again to figure it out just yet. I'm kind of just here for the ride right now. Very secure, very doing it as smart as I can, as stable as I can, but still just kind of along to see where it goes myself. So yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of unknowns, but that's okay. Well, we'll figure it out when we get there.
A lot of stores use Discord for communicating with their customer base. Do you use it for that as well? Or is it purely used almost as like a employee communication tool?
No, we use it for both. So the same server is for our community. So we have a community channel where every week I post announcements about the schedule, and people can just talk about the regular games and things like that. So we have a pretty healthy community there, people talking. But within that same server, there's a few hidden channels that are purely for the employees. So that's where we handle a lot of just the operational things. If something comes up or somebody has a question, they can ping me. I'm usually pretty available during the day. I have it tied to a few other services through Zapier. So like, if a customer service thing comes up, that it can create a ticket, it'll ping the Discord server saying, hey, like there's a new customer service ticket that needs to be looked at, or things like that. So it's kind of the central hub for communication for us, or just general announcements that I might have for the staff, or even just, again, our community. It's all on the same server. It's just some of the channels are private and some of them are public.
That's a very smart way to go about it. And I know you had mentioned a little earlier that the store, that this is its second location. What year did the store officially open in its first location?
Yeah, so just to be clear, this is we only have one store, but this is the second location for the store. So we don't actually have two offices or two stores right now. We opened the first store. I signed the lease in December of 2023, I think. So we were there for a year, and then we moved into the new store in April. So pretty much at the year mark. So from December 2023 to December 2024, we're in the old store. I signed the new lease in the new location. It was under the same landlord, so they were amicable to us moving to this new location. It's actually just like right next door to the old place. It's just a lot bigger. So a year after we were in the first store, we signed the papers for moving into the bigger store, and then we actually opened the doors in the bigger space in April. So again, 2023, I think I'll have to go back and check this. I think 2023, December 2023, I signed the lease for the first store. We opened the doors around March or April of 2023. December 2024, I signed the lease for the bigger store, and then we opened the doors April 2024 for the new store, and that's where we are right now.
And that's amazing growth. I mean, to take 1 year to already need a bigger location, what do you think were like some of the contributing factors to that success?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a myriad. One is we just built a great community right away. So I say this not to be disparaging, you know, not to put down other stores, but if you go around to a lot of game stores, they all have a really similar feel to them, which is often kind of cluttered, a little bit dirty, a little bit messy. So right from the bat, I was like, I do not want to be the prototypical game store. I want this to be clean and organized, you know, well lit, well ventilated, like just a nicer experience than you might get on an average store. Again, I don't say that to like put down other stores, but it kind of is the reality that a lot of stores don't really put a lot of effort into their appearance. And so right away, I just wanted to make sure like, hey, the store itself was really presentable. Even though it was small, it was just really well organized. We had really nice tables, we had really nice seats, really nice seating. We had just done a nice job painting it. The fixtures were all looked really nice. And then from there, we just focused on having really affordable events and building community. So we just made it, you know, we didn't try to nickel and dime the events. We tried to keep them as low as cost. In fact, we didn't make money on any events. We still don't really make money on events. We just ran them at cost to try to get people in the doors. And so we were able to really quickly just build a nice community. Throughout that, I was posting the journey on TikTok. So I was making a lot of videos that I think helped people feel more connected to the store and the community we were building. And we just offered, you know, really affordable prices, and we continue to sell online and continue to build that avenue. So like, there's just a lot of things that I felt like we were doing well, that combined allowed us to perhaps grow faster than some of the other stores might see themselves grow.
What did that documenting of the journey on TikTok look like? Because that sounds like a very interesting path to follow, especially because people tend to like those, you know, here we are, it's the beginning of starting our venture. And then you get to see, you know, brick by brick that entity grow. So I'm curious, like what your whole layout for that was, like how you went about doing it, that you started to see traction from it.
Yeah, I mean, since day one, where I actually decided to open the brick and mortar store, I just started making TikTok videos. I don't make as many on my personal account anymore. So I have two accounts, one for the store, I have my personal account. The personal account is where I started posting these videos, which is kind of the behind the scenes of opening and running the store. And when I first started doing it, I was really consistent. You know, I was posting every you know, day, every week. I was going to the store, working on this. I was posting about it. And they were just nothing too structured. I would just make a video like, hey, today I'm trying to decide what tables to buy. Today I'm in here, you know, switching out the carpet, or I'm painting the walls, or like, here's the progress we've done. So I just tried to make sure I was consistently updating throughout the journey. And I did that, you know, probably for the first year. Really posted consistently. I've fallen off a lot because I just have so many other things I'm working on right now. It hasn't had as much time to continue to post videos. But that was really instrumental in just getting the name out. You know, TikTok is still really a powerful platform for getting people to know about things. So the reach was really good on that. And yeah, it just helped people feel connected. I had a lot of support, a lot of people really interested in the journey, both local to us that came to visit the store when we first opened, and just out of state that just offered their support in whatever way they could. And again, I just started documenting it. Just, again, not anything structured. I was just making videos as I was kind of going through this journey. So
yeah, I think people tend to like that raw look behind the scenes into,
yeah.
you know, into like building something rather than it being overly edited, overly produced. It has that more realistic feel. I think it's a really good job, really good insight there too. I know you have, you know, big plans for the store. You had mentioned wanting to make it, you know, as large as you can. What is like the ultimate future forward looking view that you have for the store in the long term?
Yeah. I think it kind of sounds strange, but like the ultimate goal is I wanted to get to the store to a point. I mentioned before, like I didn't really have any structured plans. Like I'm kind of happy to see it grow organically. I'm pretty satisfied in my job my other job that I do alongside the store. But the lofty dream here is I was really interested in getting the store to a point where it's like, hey, if this could ultimately pay for my living expenses, you know, support my family, I'd love to get it to that point so that I could write a book. So like one thing I really want to do at some point is I've always been interested in writing. And so I'm like, man, I just want to get to the store to a point where it's, if it was paying all the bills, I could just kind of take a lot of time to sit down and just write like just a fantasy book, just fiction. So that's the ultimate goal, is like get it to the point where it can pay for me to just sit down and focus on writing a book for a long time. Again, like I said before, like I'm pretty happy to let this grow organically and see how it plays out. But I think the next steps for the store is that we continue to focus on online retail. I think that's a path that's really working well for us. We just try to be one of the household names for gaming supplies online. And there's a few stores out there that a lot of people think of. We want to be one of them. So I think at some point, probably the next investment we do is something like a warehouse where we can better fulfill our online orders. Because right now everything just comes out of the same store, which has some of its own problems and logistical issues. At some point, I think we get a warehouse dedicated for the online sales that helps us facilitate and do those orders better. And then that's, probably one phase. Phase number 2 is we continue to grow our social presence. Right now, after we get through kind of this retail season, I'm gonna have some more time to focus on it. We have a room in our store right now that I want to turn into a themed D&D room, but set up in a way that we can do like podcast videos of like gameplay demos. So I'm really interested in getting us to the point where myself and some of the staff can take, once a week, make a video of like demoing a game. And then we can use that video demo to, promote the game online and use it kind of to sell. So we're investing in that right now. And I think that hopefully will be a good avenue for us to continue to grow the online sales by demoing the games, which again, in turn gets us more people interested in the community as well, more social reach, which helps grow the store in general. So there's a couple things that are near-term focus for us, but on top of all that, there's still just a lot to be done in the store itself. Like we're still very nascent, even in this bigger location. There's a lot of things to do that we can improve just in terms of retail experience, like fixtures and shelves and things like that. There's continual investments that need to be made there. So there's a lot going on. Yeah.
What are some of the things you're doing for that online presence right now that you feel are working and that you see as the initial lead up to get yourself into the conversation, which you had mentioned you strive for to be one of the, known online retailers for gaming? And second part to that question is, what made you interested in making that as a goal for the store?
I think I'll take the second part first, which is what made me interested in that. I just had always been interested in e-commerce. I always thought it was really fascinating. I had done a few things alongside e-commerce in my job. It's very accessible for entrepreneurs. Like if you want to start something, like e-commerce is a really easy way to go start something. So I don't know. Again, I've just been entrepreneurial. I really enjoy running the business. I think that's actually more my hobby. Like for some people, the games are their hobby. For me, it's actually just running the business is kind of my hobby. It just so happens that I'm also interested in kind of all this nerdy game stuff going alongside the business. So I just had always been interested in it. And, I think for a brick and mortar store, there's kind of an upper limit in terms of how successful you can be, because there's kind of a geographic area where people can come. So there's a limit of how high it can go, but on e-commerce, online sales, there is no upper limit. It can be as big as, the world. So I think that's just the avenue that has the most potential for us. It's also the most competitive, because you're competing against thousands and thousands of other stores and people. But we're just making some pretty standard strides there, focusing on our website design, focusing on SEO, building out our marketing channels like email and social media, making those more consistent. It's a lot of things that I just haven't had time to focus on before that I'm trying to focus more on now, that we're getting more stable in the store itself. So it's just a lot of really standard like optimization for online sales stuff right now that I think, similar to how a lot of game stores don't necessarily focus on how the game store itself looks, they also don't really focus on how their website acts and behaves. So I think we can differentiate ourselves there a little bit.
Is there something you're trying to do from an online standpoint that may be like, say, unique in such a saturated market, like to make your store's online presence stand out? Is there anything brewing in your mind about like unique ideas?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily. Again, it is pretty commoditized. One of it's just having better customer service, right? That's where you can really differentiate. If you're all selling the same products, there's not a lot to differentiate on. One is price. The other is how you get that thing to the customer. and how you respond when they have problems. So like we're really focusing on just having a good customer service experience. Keeping our prices competitive with online is important as well. We're also focusing on investing on like just our own products as well. So rather than continue to buy things, like we'll always be a retailer, like we'll always sell other products, but like there's opportunities for us to invest in our own set of things like deck boxes or things like that. So I'm really interested in seeing if we can produce more branded things that are more unique to us. I think that's a long-term goal for us as well. We kind of do that already with some of our dice and RPG supplies and things like that.
I like the notion you made too about the cleanliness and just the overall spaciousness of the store. I've certainly seen game stores in my area where that cramped feeling does settle in, and it kind of doesn't really make you want to go to that store because you feel like you can't move, especially when there's a lot of people in there. Was this insight you obtained just from going to game stores in your area? Like, did you use that as almost like research, going to other stores, seeing what you wanted to implement in your stores, like taking what you like versus what you didn't like?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was looking to open the store first, one thing I did was I just went on Google Maps and I just plotted pretty much every game store I could find in the area. So I just put a little pin on Google Maps, and then I started visiting them. So I just went around to like all these different game stores. That did two things for me. One, it helped me figure out where geographically there was kind of a gap, because I didn't want to open my store right next to another store. I didn't want to be competing that closely. So by plotting them all, I kind of figured out, okay, here's kind of a gap in where I think we could fit our store in. And then, by visiting them all, I kind of figured out, okay, who's actually really doing this really well that we need to pay attention to, and who else is out there that's kind of just more of a hobby or a side note. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot I took away. There's a lot I learned. Again, one thing I learned is like, there's not a lot of these stores that are really differentiating themselves. They kind of all follow a very similar pattern. And so again, I just wanted to be just a little bit better, a little bit cleaner, a little bit nicer, a little, have better tables, better seats, offer more affordable events. And I think that's just helped us establish our presence pretty quickly.
What would you say is the biggest moneymaker for the store? Because when you talk about, events, I've heard many stores refer to what you mentioned, like they either sell it at cost or all the money's reinvested back into price support for that particular event. So what is currently, are you seeing is the biggest revenue generator for the store, to continue taking that revenue to reinvest back in?
Yeah, I mean, we sold a lot more Magic than I ever thought we would. So when I first opened the store, we were really focused on RPGs, like tabletop RPGs, supplies for those kind of games. I always thought that'd be more of our focus. We'd always just be like an RPG store. But when we opened the doors, we carried Magic products and we started selling Magic, and that just kept selling. And so we just kind of followed the money and started selling more and more Magic. And today we sell more Magic than we sell anything else, which is crazy. And I think that's probably the case for a lot of game stores. It's just Magic is such a popular hobby. It truly is a staple for a lot of stores. So we didn't really do anything different other than, again, just having a play space that invited people to want to come play. We sell a lot of Magic now. Probably by revenue, we sell more Magic than anything. We also sell a lot of singles now. Alongside Magic, we started a program to purchase and exchange singles, and we sell them on TCG Player now. So like, kind of have this ecosystem going of Magic altogether. But yeah, the most surprising thing, probably shouldn't have been that surprising, but it was for me a little bit, was that we sell a lot of Magic, which was never really my core intent to be a card shop, but now we kind of are.
I've heard other stores say very similar things, that the card shop wasn't the initial path forward. It was like, for instance, for another store I've talked to, I recall it being board games, and they slowly had to bring in at a pretty quick pace the Magic the Gathering, because that's it seems like the cash cow right now in the gaming industry. So I'm kind of now thinking along those lines. Does that mean, I would imagine, that Magic the Gathering events are what you run the most of, or do you have the assortment of different events?
Yeah, we actually we run an assortment of different events. We have a really popular Commander night, so like a staple of Magic, Commander. Like, we do run probably more in number of events, run more Magic than anything, but we actually have really good events for Lorcana, Flesh and Blood has been really, really good for us. We have a really strong Flesh and Blood community. So while Magic certainly took off, kind of opened the gate for other TCGs that we supported. And we have really healthy communities across a number of different games now. It's just that Magic, by volume, there's just more people that play Magic than anything else. So we do run more events for that, but the general, like one of our best nights is Flesh and Blood. We get more people that can play Flesh and Blood consistently than probably Magic. It's just that we run more frequent, smaller Magic events throughout the week.
We're going to take a quick break from this podcast to talk about our sponsor, Cardboard Shuffle. Cardboard Shuffle was our 10th podcast interview here at the Match Slip with store owner Mark. Mark has expanded his brand and has produced his own card sleeves called Shuffle Shields. Shuffle Shields come in packs of 100 premium matte card sleeves for standard size trading cards. They contain no PVC and are acid-free. I have 17 packs of Shuffle Shields card sleeves to give away to listeners of the podcast and followers of the Match Slip on social media. Requests for a free pack of card sleeves shipped for free to you will be processed on a first-come, first-served basis. To receive your free pack of Shuffle Shields, you'll need to send a screenshot that you're following Cardboard Shuffle on Facebook to frank@thematchslip.com.
And you mentioned Lorcana there too. I've heard that's kind of been dropping off, but it's good to hear that, you're still able to run those type of events at your store. Are you seeing that drop off that some other places may be seeing?
Yeah, I think for both Star Wars Unlimited and Lorcana, they started out really strong and they've kind of just plateaued a little bit. I think that's a natural progression, right? Like there's a lot of hype when something new comes out. It happens probably across multiple different industries where it's new, it's exciting, people try it out, and then once the newness kind of dies away, there's a core group of people that are really interested in it still. So we have a pretty consistent crowd that still is interested in Lorcana. I think they maybe have a little bit of an uphill battle just continuing that momentum against a juggernaut like Magic, where it has multiple formats. Commander, again, I mentioned, is a big staple. There isn't necessarily really a Commander history for Lorcana and the history of the cards and things like that people are drawn to necessarily. So we still have a pretty good community. I'm interested to see where it continues to go. I think it'll be around for a while, but yeah, I don't know if it'll be as explosive as it was that first time it came out.
What do you think is the reasoning for the drop off? Is it just the sheer number of card games? I mean, we know Magic the Gathering's popularity. I've been wondering with the various number of card games you see coming out now, like Star Wars, for example. I'm wondering if it's just an overload, an overabundance. I'm curious from the store standpoint, like what you see versus like what I see as a consumer.
I mean, certainly there's a lot coming out. I haven't seen a lot of overlap between the different player bases. Like there's certainly a few people that play all of them, but like, for example, the people that play Lorcana do not actually play Magic. Like, again, there's always an overlap, but for the core group, at least in our store, there's not a lot of people that are in both groups of these games. So I'm not really sure why necessarily it's dropped off, other than Magic just has a really, really rich history. Like it's been around for so long. It has a lot to fall back on. Everybody's got some sort of Magic collection stored away somewhere. The other one that's really interesting is Pokemon. We actually don't run Pokemon events right now. We've tried a couple times to get it going. It just hasn't been super successful. We also haven't dedicated a lot of time into it, but that's another one where we sell a lot of it, but it doesn't really have a play community, which is kind of interesting dynamic. It's definitely more focused on collectors. Whereas Lorcana, there isn't necessarily as many collectors, but there was at one time a lot of play behind it. And yeah, I just think there's a natural progression of like excitement, something new came out, and it kind of just plateaus a little bit and continues on for a while. Certainly for us, we'd love to see it continue to grow. Like the more that people want to play it, the better off we are as a store, because that's more things for us to sell to consumers. So I don't know. Yeah, I think there's a lot of question marks. I'm like by no means an expert. I'm like pretty new to this. And we've only been open for a year and a half, 2 years now. So like I don't have a lot of history to draw on or parallels to draw on. I think if you ask somebody that had been running a store for 10 or 20 years, they might have a different perspective because they've been through this before. For us, we're still so new. There's a lot I'm learning along the way as well. So yeah, I don't actually know to answer your question.
No, that's fine. I mean, it's definitely interesting hearing both sides of the, insight from whether, you're early on into it like yourself. I mean, I've talked to some other stores who were only a year in at the time as well, and others that were 20 plus years in. So I mean, hearing both sides, I mean, you get different perspectives, which is very unique from my side to hear about it. And I'm sure people listening too, it gives, the dichotomy of growing a store from the beginning, like you're doing, 2 years in here, and then seeing, how your insight into it changes over time versus like what you've got now. But I mean, you're doing a great job already. I mean, you're the first store I know that's grown that fast to already need a larger location, which I think is great. Plus you're managing a full-time job on top of it also. I'm very impressed by all that.
Yeah, well, thanks for saying that. I appreciate it.
Of course. So what is so you work your full-time job, and what is your now role with the store on a day-to-day basis? Or are you like most store owners I hear, the ordering is one of their major things that they do, or do you have team members that take care of that?
I still manage a lot of the ordering just because I'm keeping a really close eye on the financials. That's just not something I have felt the need to pass along yet. At some point it'd be awesome to have more a manager that was managing all of this, I think. While I continue to focus more on some of the strategic aspects, but I like to keep a really close eye on it because it's so closely intertwined with our finances that it's really important aspect. So again, just ordering all the inventory and things like that. I still go down to the store, twice a week. I try to get down there. I run a shift on Friday, so I just work the counter every Friday. Also happens to be Friday Night Magic, so like if there's opportunities, I play Magic as well. But I'm still, even though I'm doing my full-time job and the store, I'm still very much involved with the store. Again, I work on it every night. I'm doing as much as I can remotely, which is a lot. Again, I do all the customer service still. I do all the marketing still. I do all the inventory management and ordering. And again, I just work on refining the website, the SEO, all that kind of stuff. So that being said, I have a couple managers at the store who just manage the day-to-day operations, help run the events, help make sure the orders we are selling are getting packed up and shipped out on time. Do a lot of the in-store inventory management of like the SKUs and making sure things are in the right places. And they handle a lot of the trading card singles. So handling the processing and the ordering, the purchasing and exchange of singles and packing those orders online. So there's a lot they do, and a lot that I'm really grateful for, and they're all very capable. So yeah, I mean, things are constantly changing though. Like ask me again in a month and my answer might be different about what I'm focused on.
Of course. How many employees do you have at the store currently?
Yeah, we have, how many do I have? 4.5, 5 employees now. Yeah.
And do they all basically do the same role at the store? Or you have them like siloed into different areas of need?
Pretty much they all kind of do the same thing, which is just general operations of the store. Main focus is helping customers. Second focus, events. Third focus is packing the orders online that we sell and make sure they go out on time. And so they all kind of handle that. I do have one employee who's recently been trying to do more streaming, so like pack openings on live stream. So I do have one employee I've hired who does specifically live streaming. So we have a little room in our store that has a camera, webcam set up that they can do like rip and ship kind of experiences for people. And so that's the most unique employee I have, is somebody that does that or tries to do that as their kind of sole focus right now.
How's the success been with the rip and ship concept? I'm seeing that a lot pop up more and more now.
Yeah, it's varying degrees of success. One, more successful than I thought it should be. Like, it doesn't really make sense on paper. Like, why would somebody want that? But it is popular. Yeah, it's something that a lot of people enjoy. I think for a lot of people, that's kind of how they get their social interaction. They might not have friends that are interested in Magic or opening packs, so they can kind of use these live streams to kind of get that interaction that they might not be able to get in person. And so, it just made sense for us to try. It's pretty low cost entry, which is why you probably see so many people doing it. But we want to continue to grow across all social channels as much as we can. And so live streaming was one that we saw as an opportunity for us to try out. We're still experimenting with it. We haven't been doing it very long, but so far it seems pretty interactive and has pretty good engagement. I think the hardest part is just making sure we have the right inventory mix. That's been kind of challenging because a lot of people like, for example, like the collector boosters from Magic the Gathering, they're just harder to get, especially when you're a new store. Like, we don't have like a really large budget. We often find ourselves competing against stores on these live streams who have access to a lot of product where we don't have that access. So that's kind of our disadvantage there, I think.
Is the limit in terms of the product you can get as a newer store coming at, I guess, the distributor level?
Yeah, it's part of it is like allocation. So like you request a certain amount of product and they allocate how much product you can get based on every other store that's also requesting. So there's part of that. So the more you order, the more allocation you get over time. But for us, the bigger limiter is really just the amount of funds we have available to purchase. I think there's probably stores out there that have really been around for a long time that have deeper pockets and are able to order more than we are right now, where we have to invest in so many different things at the same time. We can't just go all in on, ordering 1,000 collector booster boxes or something like that.
So say money not being an option in that scenario, is there still, for being a newer store, still a limit in comparison to, say, a store that, as we've talked about, that's been around, say, 10 plus years?
Yeah, we certainly run up to that allocation limit, like I mentioned. For example, with the latest set, Magic the Gathering Foundations, we knew it was going to be really popular. We requested a lot of product and we didn't get everything that we requested. So we're still running into situations where even when we do have the money, we can't get everything we want. So one way we're trying to, work our way around that is we just opened up accounts with different distributors. So now when we know something's gonna be really popular, we try to place an order with all the distributors. So that way we can get, as much product as we can afford without being allocated down, which is a challenge for a lot of stores.
Do the distributors like if you're ordering, say, a lot of a specific product, or do they prefer you're, diversifying what you order from them? Like, will they be more keen to maybe the next go around to supply you what the quantity you're asking for if you have a diverse selection of products, or do they prefer you being more siloed into, like, say, one thing?
I think it depends on the distributor, probably. As far as I know, at least our main distributor, they keep track per category. So how much you spend on a specific category, they track your amount of spending on that. So the more you spend in a specific category, the more you're allocated for that category. So for them, they don't care how much you buy of other categories. They're just tracking it on a per category basis as well. I'm not sure if that's the case across all distributors, if they're just looking at total spend or if they're also looking per category. I don't think there's any distributor that only wants you to order from one category. I think they'd like you to order from as many categories as you can. But again, they're keeping track of how much you're actually ordering from that category.
And from your side, is ordering something you do every single week? Is it, like, I was curious, like, the frequency of how often you have to do it?
Yeah. As often as I remember to do it, sometimes that's every couple of weeks. Sometimes when it's a busy season like now, I'm doing it daily, where I'm just going through and be like, oh, we need to restock on these things. So it kind of ebbs and flows. We're in a really busy retail season right now, so keeping everything in stock is really important. Certainly I think consistency is really helpful, because you don't want to get to a point where you haven't reordered for a while and you have nothing to sell and now you're kind of stuck. So the more consistent I think you can be, the better. I'm just still developing a good habit around that myself.
Has it helped that Magic the Gathering with Wizards of the Coast, they've decided to go back to MSRP, help from a store standpoint? Not
really. No, MSRP without MAP, so minimum advertised price, doesn't really mean much. I don't see it really making a difference, especially because like the MSRP they suggested for some of the products was actually lower than I would have imagined for an MSRP. So typically in retail you want to get 50% margins, which means whatever you're buying, if I as a retailer buy a product for $3, I want to sell it for $6, so I get 50% of the margin. The MSRP they suggested was well below 50% for a lot of the products. But again, that doesn't really mean anything without a map. So a map is a minimum advertised price. So a lot of games like Legend Story Studios that creates Flesh and Blood, they'll have a map. They say, hey, here's the MSRP, $60. That's actually not true. The MSRP is like $100. Let's just say 100 for easy math. They say on a booster box, MSRP is $100. As a store, the lowest you can discount is 20% off MSRP. So that means the lowest I can sell the product is $80. And that keeps it competitive across everybody. So now everybody has the same MSRP or the same map. And so you don't get into this price war of like you see with some Magic products online. Some companies sell them really cheap. Well, they're it's because there's no minimum advertised price they're beholden to. So they just sell it as cheap as they can. So yeah, MSRP it doesn't really do anything without a map. It's kind of indifferent to me. A map would be really interesting because that would really shake up the industry, I think. But I don't think they have any intention of adding that.
That's very interesting. So that they've never had a map before with Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's fascinating. I never knew about that. This is the first time I'm learning. So very interesting to hear that from a store standpoint, if their map did exist, then the MSRP would prove to be more like fruitful from a beneficial standpoint for you.
Yeah. So MSRP right now is just manufactured suggested retail price. There's no I don't want to say law because none of it's like legal terms, but there's no law that says you can't go lower than the MSRP for Magic. You could sell it lower than what I bought it for if I wanted to. It wouldn't make sense to do that, but again, because there's no map, the MSRP essentially is just a suggestion. There's like, hey, here's what we think you should sell it at, but there's no reason that you actually have to sell it at this. So that doesn't change anything for a lot of the online retailers that are selling it at really discounted prices. Compare that to something like Flesh and Blood, where they have a map of 20% lower than MSRP. That means the lowest you'll be able to find online, if the MSRP is $100, is $80. So every store, the lowest they could sell it for is $80. So if Magic implemented that and said, hey, a booster box MSRP is, whatever, 150 and the lowest you can sell for is 125. Well, now everybody's on the same playing field and nobody can be the discount retailer for Magic. Again, they haven't indicated they intend to do that. I don't think they will. I don't think it's to their advantage as a company to do that because they want people to sell as much as they can. But it actually ends up hurting retailers in the long run because we're all in a price war now to try to offer the lowest price for Magic.
Right. Yeah, no, that is a rough spot to be in from a retailer standpoint. I guess to shift gears a tad bit, going away from the number side of thing and to your website. I know we talked about online retail, and I would assume I saw a TCG player as something you guys utilize. Now, obviously, TCG player takes a cut. I'm guessing the long term would be you would love to be able to, as you continue moving forward with the online presence, as you talked about being important to you. Is there a desire for you to move away from TCG player at some point, or is TCG player, revenue wise good enough to where you would like to have both coincide as a side by side?
Yeah, we don't, the fee TCG player takes, they take about 10% of sale, which is a lot. But they also have a lot of volume and traffic. So like for us, it's worth it. TCG player, if anybody's out there is listening to this, the reason we would potentially move away from TCG player is that the tools they provide sellers are so painful to use. It is not making our lives easier. And so for us, it's not necessarily the fee. It's really just the experience as a seller that they're not really giving enough tools for us to actually operate efficiently or to resolve customer concerns effectively. So yeah, I think that's the biggest issue for us is really like, it's just not an easy platform to use.
Is there something with your, computer software background that you see that you feel could behoove them to implement? Is there like one major thing that you've noticed that you find as a pain point?
Oh man, I don't know. That'd be a whole nother episode of like going through and expecting the seller platform. It's just, I don't know. There's a lot of things in there where it's like, it feels like they made changes without actually understanding how sellers are using it. So for example, like they have this software to scan cards in. That it's called Quick Scan. You can set it up to a webcam, so like it just helps us process the cards faster. It just is really, really like antiquated. Like the experience, the user experience is really not great. It's not very accurate. It's really hard to adjust certain things. Like they don't show you necessarily like so every Magic card has a number in the set. Like they don't make it easy to find the number. Like there's just a lot of stuff. Like, as a seller, you're like, why aren't they doing this? The only thing I can think of is that the people building the product aren't actually using it. And so they're just not prioritizing things like a seller would prioritize them, which is a core principle in product development, which again, the other side of my world is like understanding the user use case is really important. I don't feel like they're really doing that very well sometimes.
So on another area of computer software development, I saw on your website, you have the MTG land calculator. Was that something you built custom yourself?
Yeah, that's a really, really simple tool. But yeah, it's just like a simple little calculator. There's nothing sophisticated about it. It just takes the number of pips you'd have for a deck and says, here's your suggested, amount of land that you should use. It doesn't take into account like dual lands or anything like that. So like it's not very sophisticated. The reason I made that was for SEO purposes. Saw like, hey, what are keywords people are looking for? And I was like, oh, this is one that's not super competitive. So I put together this MTG land count calculator in a hope to kind of capture some of that traffic that was coming through that, which actually worked really well. We get a lot of hits on our land calculator. I use it whenever I draft and like I don't want to do the math. I'm just like, I would just pull it up and like use it to figure out how many lands I should add to my Magic deck.
Yeah.
But yeah, in general, I don't actually do a lot of software coding for my job. I do more, again, the project management side of things. But yeah, I made that. So pretty proud of it.
Yeah, I think it's very cool. Smart using it for the dual purpose of SEO. And that's pretty neat that it gets used too. And when I saw it, when I looked at it myself, I was immediately thinking about drafting. I said, oh, this is great to determine that, because half the time you don't have a tool like that. And you're really just kind of going off your head, counting the pips and trying to be like, okay, I think 9 for 9 mountains, 6 islands. And you're kind of just guessing based on what you have available to you, but to have something that you can kind of visually implement, I think is a great idea.
Yeah. Like I said, not very sophisticated, but it does the job well enough.
This episode of The Match Slip is sponsored by Crash CityCon, Roanoke, Virginia's premier gaming and fan convention. It's tabletop gaming at its best. In addition to role-playing games, board games, there are vendors, and so much more. Play with some of the top game masters in the area, enjoy a casual game in their open gaming area, or learn to play games you always wanted to play. You could check out more information at crashcitycon.com.
I saw on your website too, you have a rewards program as well. If you wanted to talk a little bit about that and the incentive behind it.
Yeah. I mean, this is pretty standard across multiple industries. Is like e-commerce, a pretty big staple is just a reward system. You want people to spend money, they get a little bit of money back. That brings them back the next time to spend more money, to continue keeping them as a loyal customer. So that was really the intent behind it, was just to build more of a loyalty program that rewarded people for shopping with us. So right now we do 5% back as every purchase as store credit. Where that really came about was we use that same system of store credit for when people trade in singles. So not only can they earn store credit on purchases, but if they were to trade in singles to us for sale, we would offer them store credit. And so that's the same account. So it kind of builds up in that way as well. So it just was kind of part of the ecosystem we could set up for people. And I mean, it works well. People are happy with it. It's easy for us to say, hey, do you want to join it? And then we can, people sign up with their email. That gives us an opportunity to, send them marketing later and things like that.
That's cool. I haven't seen it very much in my area where I am. The new store I go to now has it, so it's good to start to see it. I've heard from other game stores offering it in other states, but I've only seen it once in mine. So it's cool to see it kind of getting more and more picked up. Just the customary e-commerce, even in-store rewards program that you see. But you do something additional that I haven't seen many stores do. You do the giveaways too. I saw that as a feature on your site. Yeah,
varying degrees of consistency there. Again, this is something I'd love to be doing more regularly, but just with everything going on, I haven't had a lot of time to focus on it lately. But we used to run them pretty consistently, giveaways, which is just a way for us to, one, give back to the community. Number two is another way for us to generate more interest in traffic to our site. So, just consider it part of our marketing budget that we might spend on ads or something like that, and kind of grow our audience. So, again, I need to do them more often. I haven't really done them lately, but certainly part of our strategy we want to continue to do.
Yeah, I thought it was a very unique idea. I'm looking forward to seeing how you expand that out once you have the time.
Yeah.
I guess one of the final questions I had was related to the fair Riftgate wholesale aspect of your site. I haven't seen a store publicized before. Is that a separate business or is that intertwined to the store?
Yeah, somewhat similarly. So as I mentioned before, one aspect of our business is we want to have more of our own products that we sell. Right now, that's pretty limited. We have a really good offering of dice that we work with manufacturers to kind of produce uniquely. The other one we produce a lot of is stickers. So what that fair link would take you to is really stickers or T-shirts and things like that. So we have an artist we work with that produces some stickers we use for various purposes. Even just handing out orders, we like to hand out stickers, but a lot of people end up purchasing them as well. And so they're really unique designs, kind of like gaming and related stickers. And so we sell them as wholesale on fair as well. That doesn't do a lot of traffic right now. for multiple reasons. One is like they're just stickers, like they're not really that big of a thing. But we actually have sold a lot of stickers. Yeah. So one of the things we do is a sticker pack. So we had all these like we had like 14 stickers that were all like D&D themed classes, like represented as like little animals. So we put them together in packs, and we sold a lot of those. They did really well. And, I don't know, it's just, another avenue. At some point, we'd like to continue to expand the more of the kind of custom offering that we have of products. But if you were to follow through right now, it'd be mostly stickers you'd see.
I like it though. You have a lot of cool different ideas, and some of them are definitely very unique from what I've seen. This is episode 44, and having talked to 43 other game stores, I never seem to run out of something new to learn from what you all are doing. So it's cool to see you integrate all these unique different ideas and your plans to expand them out. So my last question for you is just to give people listening that may be interested in coming to check out your store in Utah. If you can describe a little bit, like virtual tour wise, like as best as you can, to describe somebody walking in for the first time, how you have the store laid out.
Yeah. So our store is rectangular. So you come in the front door, and then it's kind of a long walk to the back. And yeah, so one thing that's kind of nice about us is the front wall and the wall on the right when you first walk in is all glass windows. So we get a lot of natural light. So that's really nice. And then, you walk in the front door, and to the right side are all the tables. So all the way to the back and kind of in an L shape across the back are tables. And they're nicer tables. They're not like folding tables. They're like heavy wood tables. Some of them we actually had custom made from our first store. And so we have a number of tables along the right side and to the back. And then there's some TVs from organizing tournaments. And then the left side of the store is actually dedicated towards the retail aspects. So on the far left is the checkout counter. And then all the way along the far left wall to the back are some of these like slat wall black panels that have a bunch of product on them. So if you were to come in immediately and look left, you'd see kind of our whole Magic selection on our checkout counter. And then in the middle of the store is just a number of shelves that have different things for sale. That's the aspect of the store that I'm most keen to kind of continue to improve, because right now it's just kind of a mishmash of shelves we've acquired. Over time, as we get more funds and continue to grow the store, I'd like to get all those shelves into a nice place where they're all of a consistent design and quality. But right now they're kind of a mix, which is fine. It's just not what I would ideally have. But yeah, so again, outside of that kind of general layout, the thing you probably notice most is like it's just really open. We have a really open feel. There's a lot of space between the seats. There's a lot of space between the tables. So whenever you're playing, even when they're full, we could have 90 people in there playing at any given time. It doesn't feel too crowded because there's enough space for everybody. And yeah, other than that, it's just, we try to keep it clean and organized. There's some posters on the wall. Everything's nice and framed. The walls are painted nice white. Like I said, just trying to make sure we have an environment that is really welcoming and encouraging for people, that they want to come play and they don't feel like they're like, oh, like I have to go play there. It's like, no, that's the place I actually do want to go play. So yeah, come check it out if you're ever in Salt Lake City.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And as we wrap up here, Nathan, I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I wish you nothing but continued success with the store, and look forward to hearing about how it grows from here. Where could people find out about the store, or anything else you'd like people to check out?
Yeah, it's just riftgate.com. riftgate.com is our website. And from there, you can figure everything else out.
Awesome. And I'll be sure to put a link in the show notes for everybody to access it. Nathan, thank you again for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for the invite.